The snow started falling in a slow, heavy way that made the world feel softer than usual. But inside Sandra's chest there was nothing soft at all. Her heart felt tight, almost bruised as she walked quickly through the quiet Christmas street, her boots breaking through patches of untouched snow. Festive lights glowed on rooftops, warm yellow bulbs flickering against the cold night sky, but the gentle beauty of it all only made her eyes sting more. She didn't want to stop walking because if she did, she knew the weight of everything she had been trying to hide would catch up with her. She knew she had to keep moving, even if she didn't know exactly where she was going. She only knew she had to get away before he saw how much she was breaking inside. But Keanu had already noticed. He had noticed the moment her smile trembled at the Christmas party when she tried to laugh at something small. He had noticed the way her eyes darted away from him, as if she feared what he might see in them. He noticed every tiny detail the same way he always had. He had never been the type to overlook things, especially not with her. So when she slipped out quietly through the side exit into the snowy evening, he didn't hesitate. He followed. His breath formed clouds in the cold air as he jogged after her, calling her name once, then twice, only to realize she wasn't slowing down. Something was wrong, and tonight he wasn't going to let her carry it alone. Sandra's steps grew faster when she heard his voice behind her, but it wasn't anger that pushed her forward. It was fear. Fear of what she had been holding inside for too long. Fear of the truth she had never said aloud. Fear of how weak she felt. She didn't want Keanu to see her on a night like this. Christmas was supposed to be joyful, bright, warm, but she had been pretending for too many months, showing up on sets with steady hands while her heart cracked quietly in the quieter hours of the night. She hadn't wanted anyone to worry. She didn't want pity. And she especially didn't want him to look at her with that soft, steady concern that always made her walls fall apart. When she reached the end of the street and turned the corner, her boots slid slightly over an icy patch, and she steadied herself against a cold metal railing. Her breath came out uneven, and she squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, just long enough to gather herself, because she knew she couldn't outrun him forever. The snow kept falling in delicate flakes that landed in her hair, melting against the warmth of her skin. She wished the world could just pause for a moment, but life didn't work that way. Not even at Christmas. Keanu slowed down as he approached her. He didn't grab her arm or ask his questions too fast. He simply stopped a few feet away, lowering his voice so the moment wouldn't feel heavy or frightening. He knew her well enough to understand that sometimes the softest tone was the only one that reached her. His breath was gentle in the cold air as he spoke. "Sandra, please don't walk away from me." She kept staring at the ground, watching the snowflakes sink into the slush near her boots. She didn't answer at first. She didn't trust her own voice. The silence stretched for a moment, long enough that he took a single step closer but still gave her space. "Did something happen tonight?" he asked quietly. "You left so fast, I got worried." Her throat tightened, and she wished she could swallow the emotion building inside, but tonight her heart was too tired. She finally lifted her head slightly, not enough to meet his eyes, but enough to show she wasn't ignoring him. "I'm fine," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. I needed some air." Keanu exhaled slowly, and for the first time she looked at him. His face softened immediately, and that was the moment she regretted turning around because his expression was exactly what she feared. It wasn't judgment or confusion or pressure. It was kindness. Deep, quiet kindness. The kind that made her chest ache because she didn't feel strong enough to accept it. "You needed more than air," he replied gently. "I can tell." A weak laugh slipped out of her, not because anything was funny, but because sometimes sadness forced a laugh out like it was trying to escape. She shook her head and finally stepped away from the railing, brushing snow off the sleeve of her coat. She started walking again, but slower this time, and Keanu matched her pace beside her. "Keanu, you don't have to follow me," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "That's why I'm here." Those simple words shook something inside her. It was strange how he always knew exactly how to say things in a way that disarmed her. She had spent so long building emotional distance, hiding the parts of herself that felt too heavy to share, yet he always seemed to slip through the cracks of her defenses. She walked in silence for a moment, hoping he wouldn't push further, but he stayed quiet, waiting for her to speak first. He always gave her room. Always. The street ahead of them glowed beneath strings of warm Christmas lights stretched between lampposts. Small shops were closed, their windows decorated with wreaths and bright ribbons, and the sound of distant carols drifted faintly from a speaker someone had forgot to switch off. It should have been comforting, but she felt strangely exposed walking with him through such a peaceful scene, while chaos moved quietly inside her chest. After several long moments, she exhaled slowly and said, I didn't want anyone to notice I was feeling off. It's Christmas. People deserve joy tonight. That includes you, Keanu said. She swallowed the lump in her throat. I haven't felt like I deserved that for a while. He stopped walking the second she said that, his shoes crunching against the snow. She hesitated too, finally turning to face him fully. The cold wind brushed against her cheeks, but she barely felt it. All she felt was the tension inside her building like a storm. Keanu's voice was soft, but it carried weight. Why would you ever think something like that? She didn't answer right away. She looked toward the decorated storefront beside them, staring at the reflection of the Christmas lights against the glass. She couldn't bring herself to look directly at him while saying the one thing she had been trying so hard to bury. Because I feel like I'm failing, she whispered, in more ways than people know. Keanu's eyes softened even more, but he didn't rush her. He didn't try to deny her feelings too quickly. He simply waited, like he always did, letting her take her time. She took a deep breath, and then the words came spilling out in a long, trembling wave. I've been pretending everything is fine and people think I'm strong and I try to be, but I get home at night and I feel empty. I feel tired, and I don't know how to explain it without sounding dramatic or ungrateful or weak. I hate feeling like this, and I hate that I can't make it stop no matter how hard I try. Snowflakes drifted slowly around them, landing softly on her lashes and melting into tiny droplets. Her voice cracked as she continued. And the worst part is, I didn't want you to see me like this. I didn't want you to worry about me. I didn't want you to think I'm falling apart. Keanu felt something shift inside him. He stepped a little closer, not enough to overwhelm her, but enough that his presence felt grounding, steady, warm, even in the freezing air. He lowered his voice. I don't think you're falling apart, he said. I think you're carrying too much alone. Those words hit her harder than she expected. She looked down again, her lips pressing together to stop them from trembling. She had spent months acting like her world was functioning smoothly, letting only tiny cracks show here and there. But tonight, standing with him in the snow, everything felt too heavy to hold in anymore. He continued, Sandra, it's okay to let someone in, even just a little. She breathed out slowly, forming a small ghost of air in the cold. Then she whispered, You say that like it's easy. It's not, he replied, but you don't have to do it all at once. A faint tremor moved through her fingers as she reached up to wipe her cheek. She hadn't realized she was crying until she felt the warmth of the tear against her skin. She cursed at herself quietly under her breath, feeling embarrassed. Keanu shook his head softly. Don't apologize for that. I'm not, she whispered. I'm just tired of feeling this way. They stood there for a moment, silent except for the soft sound of snowfall and distant holiday music. The world was quiet still, and yet something inside her was shifting slowly, like a fragile ice layer beginning to crack under warmth. After a long moment, Keanu asked gently, Is this why you left the party? Because the wait was too much? She nodded. I didn't want anyone to see me break. I especially didn't want you to. Keanu took another quiet breath. Why especially me? She froze. The question lingered in the cold air, heavy and delicate, like a snowflake that could shatter if touched too quickly. She didn't know how to answer. She didn't know how honest she was ready to be. After several seconds, she whispered, Because I care about how you see me more than I should. Silence fell around them, more powerful than any words either could have spoken. Keanu's heartbeat quickened, but he didn't rush toward a conclusion. Instead, he stepped closer, the snow crunching softly under his boots. Before he could speak, Sandra suddenly shook her head and turned away, her breath trembling. I shouldn't have said that. Why not? He asked softly. Because it complicates things. Things were already complicated, he replied. She closed her eyes, and a soft, shaky breath escaped her lips. She wanted to walk away again, but her legs felt heavy. She felt like she was standing at the edge of something big, something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. She whispered, Keanu, please don't make me say anything more tonight. Keanu didn't push. He simply nodded, stepping back just enough so she could breathe again. She appreciated him for that more than she could ever say. The snow continued falling around them, and for a moment, neither spoke. Then Keanu noticed something behind her, a distant sound, faint but growing. His expression changed slightly as he focused on it. Sandra turned too, sensing his shift in energy. A pair of headlights appeared at the end of the street. moving faster than they should have been considering the icy road conditions. The sound of tires sliding over snow echoed through the quiet night, and the car swerved sharply as it approached, the driver clearly losing control. Keanu instinctively grabbed Sandra's arm, pulling her back toward him. She stumbled slightly, her breath catching. The car slid closer, turning sideways as if it might crash into the railing they had just been standing beside moments earlier. Keanu's heartbeat thundered in his chest. Sandra's eyes widened as the car skidded, and in the span of a single second, the peaceful Christmas street transformed into a moment filled with sudden danger and uncertainty. The car spun once before hitting a snowbank, sending a loud crack through the still winter air. The world froze. Keanu held Sandra firmly, steadying her. Neither of them expected what happened next. The car door opened, and a familiar voice called out into the snowy night. But the voice wasn't calling for help. It was calling her name. Sandra's breath halted. Her entire body went still. Keanu's grip tightened just enough to show he sensed the shift in her energy. She stared at the figure stepping out of the car, her heart pounding harder than it had all night. Because she knew that voice. She knew it too well. And she never expected to hear it here. Not tonight. Not on Christmas. Not after all these years the snow kept falling in slow, silent waves as Sandra stared at the figure stepping out of the crashed car. Her breath caught in her throat, tightening in a way she hadn't felt in years. The cold winter air pressed against her chest as she tried to process what she was seeing. Keanu stayed beside her, keeping a steadying hand near her arm, not gripping this time, but close enough that she could feel his warmth through the layers of her coat. He sensed the tremor that moved through her body, even though she tried so hard to hide it. At first, the snow made the figure blurry, just a shape illuminated by the headlights, but then the voice came again, firmer this time, desperate and shaking slightly. "Sandra, wait, please." And Sandra froze deeper than the winter around her. Keanu watched her reaction, quietly piecing together that whoever this was meant something significant to her. A name formed slowly in her mind, one she had buried deep under years of emotional distance. She didn't say it aloud, but the shock in her eyes told Keanu more than words ever could. The figure stepped closer, brushing snow from their jacket, breathing hard from the adrenaline of the near accident. The world felt strangely suspended as the headlights reflecting off the snow cast long shadows across the icy street. The person stumbled slightly in the snow before standing fully under a streetlight, revealing themselves. It was Michael, Sandra's older brother. A brother she hadn't spoken to in almost 4 years. Keanu remained still, not stepping ahead or retreating. He sensed this was a moment Sandra needed space for, yet his instinct to protect stayed alert in his posture. Michael took a shaky breath, his eyes wide with a mix of fear, guilt, and relief. "I'm okay, I saw you walk out of the party and I needed to talk to you. I've been looking for you for days, but I didn't expect." He gestured helplessly toward the car lodged in the snowbank. "That." Sandra's voice barely escaped. "Michael, what are you doing here?" Michael swallowed hard, shivering not just from the cold. "I came to talk to you. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know if you'd even listen." He glanced toward Keanu with an almost apologetic expression before turning back to his sister. "But I had to try." Sandra's entire body felt heavy, almost numb. She hadn't seen Michael since the week everything in their family collapsed. The week she lost trust, lost peace, lost the quiet safety that had once existed between them. Keanu gently stepped just a little closer to her, not touching, but enough that she could lean if she needed to. Sandra noticed and appreciated it without a word. Michael wiped snow from his eyebrows as he tried to catch his breath. "I'm sorry about how that looked. I didn't mean to scare you. I was just trying to catch up before you disappeared again." That last sentence made Sandra flinch slightly. Keanu noticed immediately. She took a step back from her brother, her boots crunching deeply into the snow. "Michael, why now? Why tonight of all nights?" Her voice cracked at the end, but she kept herself steady. Michael hesitated, then spoke softly. "Because I couldn't let another Christmas pass without trying to fix things." Sandra shook her head slowly, breathing hard. "You can't just show up after 4 years and expect anything from me." Michael lowered his gaze to the ground, shame tightening his shoulders. I know I don't deserve it. I know I messed everything up, but I was hoping maybe you could just hear me out. Keanu watched in silence, taking in every detail, reading Sandra's posture, her breath, the emotions written in her eyes. He didn't speak, but the quiet steadiness of his presence reminded her she didn't have to face this alone. The snow crunched lightly as Michael took one step forward, but Sandra quickly held up her hand. Stop. He froze instantly. She swallowed, her eyes glossy. I'm not sure I can handle this, not tonight. Michael's face fell. His breaths came out foggy in the freezing air. I understand, I really do, but I've been carrying something for a long time, something you deserved to know years ago, and it's eating me alive. Keanu's gaze deepened, sensing that whatever Michael was holding wasn't small. Sandra looked torn, the kind of emotional pull that could crush someone's heart in two. She whispered, Michael, I can't do this if you came to repeat old apologies. I can't go back to that pain. It's not an old apology, Michael said quickly, his voice trembling with urgency. Sandra, it's something else, something you never knew. She blinked, confused. Keanu straightened slightly. Michael continued, what happened, what broke us apart, wasn't just what you think, there's more, and I need to tell you before it destroys me. Sandra felt her breath catch, fear creeping up her spine. What do you mean, more? Michael took a deep, shaky breath and looked directly into her eyes. There's a truth I've been hiding from you, the real reason I walked away, the real reason everything fell apart. Keanu shifted, his eyes narrowing slightly, not in hostility but in concern. He wanted to step in to ask for clarity, but he held back, trusting Sandra to lead this moment. Sandra's voice was a whisper, what truth? Michael opened his mouth, but something about the moment felt fragile, like one wrong movement could shatter all three of them. He exhaled shakily. Please, let's go somewhere warmer, just for a few minutes. I'll explain everything. Sandra looked at him with an exhausted, almost defeated expression. She didn't trust him, and she didn't trust the weight of whatever he was carrying. Keanu finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. There's a cafe still open on the next block. We can walk there. Michael nodded gratefully. Sandra didn't move. Keanu turned gently toward her. You don't have to decide alone. She met his eyes. Something in his gaze grounded her again, the quiet assurance that he wouldn't let anything hurt her tonight. She took a slow breath and nodded faintly. They walked together through the snow-covered streets toward the warm glow of the small cafe at the corner. Christmas music played softly through the windows, the warm light inside glowing like a safe escape from the winter outside. When they entered, the bell above the door chimed softly. The place was nearly empty, just one older couple sharing hot cocoa and a teenager reading a book near the window. The warmth felt almost overwhelming after the cold. Keanu made sure Sandra got a seat in a quiet corner booth. He sat beside her while Michael sat across from them. Sandra kept her coat wrapped around her, as if letting it go would make her too vulnerable again. When the waiter approached, they all ordered warm drinks, though Sandra barely heard herself saying the words. The silence at the table grew thick, the kind that pressed against the chest like a weight. Finally, Michael leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers trembling slightly. Sandra, he began softly, I know I lost the right to ask for your time. But please understand, I've spent 4 years living with the guilt of everything that happened. 4 years wishing I could turn back time, and 4 years knowing I ruined the closest relationship I ever had. Sandra looked down, her fingers curling around the cup in front of her. Steam rose gently, fogging the space between her and the truth she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. Michael, she whispered, we lost more than a relationship, we lost trust, and I lost the only piece of family I knew how to rely on. His eyes filled with regret. I know, and that's why I'm here, because you deserve to know the truth about that night, about why I left the way I did. Keanu watched quietly, his expression unreadable but deeply attentive. Sandra looked up, her voice barely holding steady. Then tell me. Michael swallowed hard. The night everything fell apart wasn't because of the argument we had. It wasn't because I was angry at you. It wasn't even because I felt betrayed. Sandra's brow furrowed. Then why did you disappear? Why did you cut me off without even explaining? Michael looked down at his trembling hands. Because I was protecting someone. Sandra felt a chill run through her. Protecting who? Michael's voice cracked as he whispered, "You." Her breath faltered. Keanu leaned in slightly, sensing the moment sharpen. "Protecting me from what?" Sandra asked carefully. Michael lifted his gaze, and the sadness in his eyes was deeper than anything she had ever seen in him before. "From the truth," he said, "a truth that could change how you see everything." Sandra's heart thudded painfully as her voice dropped to a whisper. "What truth, Michael?" Michael's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "The truth about Mom." Sandra felt the world tilt. Keanu stiffened beside her. Michael's next words came out in a trembling breath. "She didn't die the way you were told." Sandra's pulse stopped. Every sound in the cafe faded. Keanu's jaw tightened. Michael looked directly at her, tears finally breaking through. And then he said it. And what happened to her wasn't an accident. The words hung in the warm air of the cafe like a shadow too heavy for Christmas night. Sandra felt her body go cold, colder than the winter outside, colder than the snow still melting on her coat. Her fingers loosened around her cup until it slipped from her hands and almost tipped over, but Keanu caught it gently before it spilled. She didn't even notice his hand beneath hers. All she could hear was the echo of Michael's voice. "It wasn't an accident." Her heart thudded painfully inside her chest, a rhythm that felt too loud for the quiet cafe. The Christmas music playing faintly in the background suddenly felt wrong, out of place, too bright against the darkness rising inside her. She stared at Michael, her breath trembling as confusion tangled with fear. "Michael," she whispered, "what are you talking about?" Michael looked down at his hands, his shoulders folding in under the weight of what he had carried for years. He took a slow breath, his voice thick with guilt. "I didn't come here to hurt you. I came because I can't live with this anymore. I can't keep it inside knowing you've been building your life on a lie." Sandra blinked, her eyes burning. "A lie about how Mom died." Keanu shifted closer to her, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the grounding warmth of his presence. He kept his eyes on Michael, reading every detail in his expression. Sandra didn't look at him. She couldn't. Her entire world felt like it was tilting beneath her. Michael nodded slowly. "Yes." Sandra swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "Michael, I was there when the police told us. I remember everything about that night. I remember the officer saying it was a car accident, that she lost control in the rain, that it was over fast." Her breath hitched. "Are you telling me they lied?" Michael closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing himself. "Not exactly. They didn't lie. They just didn't tell you the whole story." Keanu's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing something deeper, something dangerous hidden inside Michael's words. Sandra leaned forward, her hands flat on the table. "Tell me everything right now." Michael's voice softened. "Before I do, I need you to understand something. Everything I did, leaving, cutting contact, shutting you out, it wasn't because of you. It was because I didn't want you getting pulled into the darkness I found." Keanu exchanged a quiet glance with Sandra, trying to read how much more she could handle. But she didn't back down. She didn't even blink. She whispered, "Just tell me." Michael took another deep, steadying breath. "Mom didn't lose control of her car," he said slowly. "Someone else did that to her." Sandra felt the blood drain from her face. She pressed her hand against her mouth as the cafe lights blurred. "Someone? What do you mean, someone?" Michael hesitated. "Mom had been dealing with something before she died, something she hid from us to protect us." Sandra shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "She never hid anything from us." Michael looked at her with a pain that made her chest ache. "That's what you believed, what she wanted you to believe. But I found things after she died, messages, notes, emails, things that made it clear she wasn't safe." Keanu's jaw tightened. "Unsafe from who?" Michael's voice dropped lower. "From someone she used to know, someone she once trusted, someone who started threatening her." Sandra blinked, horrified. "Why didn't she tell us?" "She didn't want us to worry," Michael replied. "You know how she was. She carried her burdens quietly. She always thought she could handle things on her own." Sandra covered her face with both hands, her breaths uneven. "Michael, if what you're saying is true, then why did you leave? Why didn't you tell me?" Michael's eyes filled with tears he tried to hide behind a forced swallow. "Because the messages didn't stop when she died. They came to me instead." Keanu's eyes sharpened with immediate concern. "What kind of messages?" Michael reached into his coat pocket with trembling fingers. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges as if it had been opened and closed too many times. He placed it gently on the table. "This," he whispered. Sandra stared at it, afraid to touch it. Keanu reached for it, but he paused, waiting for Sandra's nod before unfolding it. She gave a faint nod, barely visible. Keanu opened the paper carefully. The handwriting was messy, rushed, almost frantic. The message was simple but chilling. "You should have left it alone. Now she's gone because of you. Stay away from the truth or you'll be next." Keanu grip tightened slightly around the paper. Sandra gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Michael, oh my God." Michael looked away, his throat tightening. "I got that a week after her funeral and more after that, and I was terrified, not for me but for you. Whoever this person was, they blamed me. They watched us. They knew things they shouldn't have known." Keanu folded the paper slowly, deliberately, as if smoothing the edges of something far more fragile than a threatening message. Sandra leaned back in the booth, her eyes unfocused as tears slid silently down her cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her voice cracked. "Michael, why didn't you trust me? We could have faced it together." He shook his head, his voice breaking. "No, I couldn't drag you into that world. I couldn't risk something happening to you, so I left. I disappeared. I thought distance would keep you safe." "It didn't keep me safe emotionally," Sandra whispered. "You left me alone when I needed you most." Michael's face crumpled. "I know, and that's my greatest regret." A heavy silence fell over them. The warmth of the cafe seemed to close in, tightening around their hearts. The hum of soft Christmas music mixed with the quiet clink of dishes in the background, but none of them seemed to hear it. For a moment, everything felt suspended in a bubble of truth that hurt too much to touch. Keanu finally spoke, his voice steady and grounding. "Do you still get messages?" Michael paused before answering. "Not the same way, but once in a while there are signs someone is still watching." Sandra's breath hitched. "Watching you?" Michael's eyes flickered up to hers, and the look he gave her sent a ripple of fear through her chest. "Watching us?" Sandra's pulse quickened wildly. "What do you mean, us?" Michael hesitated, then pulled out his phone. He slowly rotated the screen toward her. "A photo. Taken from a distance. Grainy. Zoomed in. But unmistakable. A photo of Sandra leaving her house last week." Sandra's heart dropped to the floor. Keanu stiffened beside her, his entire posture shifting, subtle but unmistakably protective. Michael's voice trembled. "I got this 2 days ago, no words, no threats, just the photo. I came to find you because I'm scared, and not for me this time. I'm scared for you." Sandra felt her breath coming too fast, her hands shaking. "Why would anyone follow me? What does any of this have to do with me?" Michael swallowed hard, then whispered the words he had been dreading to say most. "Because Mom didn't hide everything from us. She left something behind, something important, and whoever is watching, they think you have it." Sandra shook her head, panicked. "Have what?" Michael leaned in, his voice barely audible. "A journal." Keanu exchanged a quick, concerned glance with Sandra. Sandra's eyes widened. "I don't have any journal." Michael nodded. "I know, because I think Mom hid it somewhere before she died, but whoever's been watching, they think we know where it is, and they think you're the key." Keanu's voice low and firm. "Does anyone else know about this?" "No," Michael whispered. "No one." Sandra closed her eyes, overwhelmed. Every emotion crashed into her: fear, confusion, betrayal, grief, uncertainty. Her chest tightened as if the room had shrunk around her. Keanu gently placed his hand on the table close to hers, not touching yet, but close enough that she could choose to reach for it. She didn't at first. She just stared at her brother, searching his face for any sign this was some horrible misunderstanding. But there was no lie in Michael's eyes. Only deep guilt. Deep fear. Deep truth. Sandra finally found her voice again, barely. "Michael, what does this journal have in it? What did Mom write that someone would follow us for years?" Michael hesitated, and hesitated again. Then, with a voice that cracked in the middle, he whispered, "The truth about who destroyed her life." Sandra felt the room spin. Before she could speak, before she could breathe, the cafe door flew open with a sharp jingle. A gust of cold air burst in, and a figure stepped inside. A figure wearing a dark coat, hood pulled low, snow dusting their shoulders. Their eyes scanned the room. Slowly, intentionally. Keanu tensed, his entire body shifting subtly into alertness. Michael went pale. Sandra felt the blood freeze in her veins. The figure's gaze landed on their table. And they didn't look away. The cafe door closed slowly behind the hooded figure, the soft jingle of the bell fading into a silence so heavy it felt almost unnatural. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The warm lights inside the cafe flickered over tables and chairs, reflecting off windows decorated with small Christmas wreaths, but none of that warmth reached Sandra's skin. She sat frozen, her breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. Every sound faded except the faint hum of the heater and the beating of her heart, which felt too loud, too fast, too real. Keanu noticed the shift instantly. He had always been attuned to the smallest changes around him, the tiny details others might brush aside. Now he saw the way the figure's gaze locked onto their table with chilling precision. There was no hesitation, no confusion. Whoever this person was, they knew exactly who they were looking for. Michael's hand slipped beneath the table, not for a weapon, but for grounding. His fingers trembled against the edge of the seat as he tried to calm his breathing. He had seen this before, shadows appearing where they didn't belong, eyes watching from places he couldn't understand. But seeing it happen here, in front of Sandra, made his stomach twist with dread. Sandra forced herself to inhale, then another. The warm air felt thick, almost suffocating, but she clung to every breath. The figure took a step forward, slow and deliberate, snow falling from their shoulders onto the cafe floor. Keanu leaned slightly toward Sandra, lowering his voice to a whisper only she and Michael could hear. "Don't react, not yet." His tone wasn't frightened, it was steady, protective, focused. The sound of it alone helped Sandra's pulse settle just enough that she could think again. She swallowed hard, her eyes flicking between the hooded figure and her brother. Michael whispered back, "I think they followed me here. I didn't know, I didn't think." Keanu cut him off softly. "Not now, stay calm, we assess first." The figure walked closer. The cafe was small, too small for anyone to blend into the background unnoticed, and soon they were standing only a few tables away, their face partially hidden by the hood. They paused for a moment as if deciding whether to approach or wait. The faint glow from the counter lights revealed only the lower half of their face, sharp jawline, lips pressed tight. The waiter behind the counter seemed oblivious, humming along to the soft Christmas tune coming through the speakers. The older couple in the corner continued their quiet conversation, unaware of the sudden shift in air pressure around them. But the teenager by the window looked up. Their eyes widened slightly. Even they could feel it. Sandra tried to steady her breathing. Her fingers brushed the edge of her cup, but the ceramic warmth wasn't enough to stop the trembling inside her. She felt Keanu's presence beside her, calm, poised, ready. He didn't move recklessly, he didn't panic. He simply watched, waiting for the right moment to act if needed. The figure took another step forward. And then another. They reached the next table. Sandra's pulse hammered in her ears. Keanu slowly straightened, not aggressively, but in a way that made it clear he was ready to intervene. His posture changed in an instant, subtle but unmistakable. Michael noticed it and felt a desperate sense of relief wash through him. Whatever happened next, Keanu wasn't going to let Sandra face it alone. The hooded figure finally stopped at their table. They didn't speak. They didn't sit. They simply stood there, watching, silent. Sandra felt her throat tighten. She forced out the faintest whisper, "Can I help you?" For a few seconds, the figure didn't respond. Then slowly, they lifted their hand and pulled the hood back. Sandra gasped. Michael blinked in shock. Keanu's expression changed, but not in surprise, more in recognition. The person staring back at them was a woman. Her hair dark, slightly wet from the snow, her eyes sharp but exhausted, as if she hadn't slept in days. She looked familiar in a way that struck Sandra hard and fast, like a memory she had forgotten she possessed. "You don't remember me, do you?" the woman asked, her voice tired, low, but strangely gentle. Sandra shook her head slowly, unsure whether she should admit it or stay silent. I'm sorry, I don't." The woman exhaled softly. "That's probably for the best." Michael's hand tightened under the table. "Who are you? Why have you been following us?" The woman's eyes flickered to him. "I'm not your enemy." Keanu didn't move his gaze from her. That's not how this looks. She gave a faint, sad smile that didn't reach her eyes. I know, I made mistakes trying to reach you. I wasn't sure who I could trust anymore. Sandra glanced between them, confusion swirling inside her. Then why did you take pictures of my house? Why did you send Michael those messages? The woman hesitated. Then she shook her head. I didn't send him threats, that wasn't me. Michael frowned immediately. I got messages for months, they knew everything. It wasn't me, she repeated firmly. I sent one thing only, a warning, not a threat. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his eyes steady. Show us. The woman reached into her coat pocket slowly, carefully, letting them see her movements so they wouldn't react defensively. She pulled out a folded piece of paper and placed it gently on the table. Sandra stared at the familiar shape, the size, the way the edges were worn. Michael's eyes widened. Another letter. The original letter, the woman whispered. The one I left for your mother. Sandra froze. Keanu stopped breathing for a moment. Michael's voice cracked. What did you just say? The woman's eyes softened with regret. I knew your mother, a long time ago, long before all of this. She wasn't just anyone to me, she was. Her voice broke. She inhaled sharply, steadying herself. She was my friend. Sandra's chest tightened painfully. My mother, she never mentioned you. Because she was trying to protect you, the woman said, her voice gentle but filled with old grief. Protect you from everything she got tangled in. Protect you from the person who hurt her. Michael leaned forward, his voice tense. Then who is that person? Who are we running from? Who sent the threats? The woman hesitated, glancing at the cafe door before lowering her voice. Someone who doesn't stop once they begin. Someone who knows how to hide in plain sight. Someone your mother never should have trusted. Keanu frowned. And you, what do you want from them? Nothing, she whispered. I'm just trying to stop what they started. Sandra exhaled shakily. Then why follow me? Why watch me? The woman's eyes softened. Because before your mother died, she left something with me, something she wanted you to have when the time was right. Michael stiffened. The journal. The woman nodded slowly. Yes. Sandra stared at her, feeling her heartbeat pulse in her throat. You have it. Not anymore, the woman whispered. Michael's eyes widened in panic. What do you mean, not anymore? She lowered her gaze, guilt weighing down every word. It was stolen 2 weeks ago. Sandra felt her stomach drop. Stolen by who? The woman looked up, eyes filled with fear that she had been trying to hide behind her calm exterior. By the same person who destroyed your mother's life. Silence crashed over the table. The woman continued, her voice trembling slightly. I came here tonight because I need to warn you before it's too late. That person, they're closer than you think, and they don't just want the journal. Keanu stiffened. Then what do they want? The woman swallowed hard. They want to erase anyone who knows the truth. Your mother was the first. I might be next. She looked at Michael. And then you. Her eyes finally met Sandra's. And her voice broke completely. And now they're coming for you. Sandra's breath caught violently, fear gripping her heart with cold fingers. Why me? Because, the woman whispered painfully, your mother left a second message, one no one else knows about, and they think you have it. Sandra shook her head fiercely. I don't have anything. The woman leaned in closer. You do, you just don't realize it yet. Keanu's gaze sharpened. Where is it? The woman hesitated. Then, somewhere in your childhood home. Michael cursed under his breath. We sold that house years ago. I know, she replied. But the message is still there, hidden somewhere only Sandra would think to look, and that's why you've been watched. They're waiting for you to lead them to it. Sandra felt sick. What message? What could be so important? The woman's expression darkened. The message that reveals the name of the person who caused your mother's death. Keanu's hand finally moved. He reached for Sandra's hand under the table, not forcefully, but firmly, grounding her in the reality of the moment. She closed her fingers around his instinctively. The cafe lights flickered gently overhead. The woman looked toward the window suddenly, her expression shifting from tense to terrified. They're here. Michael spun around. Who? The woman's voice shook as she whispered. The one watching you. Keanu stood slightly, ready to shield Sandra. The woman's eyes widened further. "Don't turn around," she hissed urgently. "Don't make it obvious." Sandra's heartbeat pounded in her ears. "What do we do?" The woman's voice was barely audible. "You need to leave, now." Michael looked panicked. "How? They'll follow us." The woman leaned closer, her words trembling. "You don't leave through the door." Keanu narrowed his eyes. "Then how?" The woman took a deep breath and whispered, "The back exit." Keanu straightened fully, protective instinct firing through every muscle. Sandra gripped his hand, terrified. Michael clenched his jaw. The woman's voice shook one last time. "And whatever you do, don't let them see Sandra." Sandra turned to Keanu, voice trembling. "Keanu, what if we're too late?" The cafe lights flickered again. And from somewhere behind them, a shadow moved. The shadow behind them shifted again, slow enough to be deliberate, slow enough to make every muscle in Sandra's body tighten as if her bones were turning to stone. The warm cafe air felt suddenly thin, too thin to breathe. Sandra's heart hammered beneath her ribs, each beat louder than the last. Her fingers instinctively clung to Keanu's hand under the table, and he squeezed back with a steady pressure that told her he was here. He was with her, no matter what was coming. The woman with the dark coat leaned in even closer, her voice barely a breath. "You don't have long. Whoever they sent, they don't wait." Keanu's jaw tightened, but his mind stayed sharp. "Is there another exit besides the back door?" "Yes," she whispered. "A service corridor that leads behind the alley. Only employees use it. The door is next to the kitchen counter." Michael swallowed hard. "If we move now, won't they notice?" The woman nodded slightly. "They will if you stand up all at once, but if you move slowly one at a time, they might not register it fast enough." Sandra's breath shook. "Who exactly is behind us?" The woman's eyes darkened. "Someone whose job is to get close without being noticed. Someone trained to blend in. Someone who doesn't care about Christmas or crowds or consequences." Keanu looked at Sandra, his voice low, steady, grounding. "We're going to get out of here. Just trust me." She nodded faintly, though her hands trembled. She had trusted him in smaller ways before, but tonight was different. Tonight felt like standing on the edge of something dangerous and unknown, and Keanu was the only thing keeping her from slipping. The woman reached into her pocket again and slid something small across the table. A key, old and worn, with a small blue tag attached. "This opens the service corridor door," she whispered. "I got a copy years ago from the owner. He doesn't know I still have it." Keanu pocketed the key without hesitation. The woman looked directly at Sandra, her voice soft and urgent. "Whatever happens, stay close to him. He's the only one here who can keep you safe if things go wrong." Sandra felt her throat tighten. "Why him?" The woman let out a small, bittersweet breath. "Because your mother trusted him, more than you know." Sandra froze. Keanu's breath caught. But before either of them could ask what she meant, the shadow behind them shifted again. Keanu straightened slightly, masking the movement with a stretch. "I'm going first," he murmured to Sandra. "When I move, count to 5, then stand up slowly. Walk like nothing's wrong." "And me," Michael whispered, voice shaking. "You go last," Keanu said. "Keep an eye on the back door. If they get up, warn us." The woman shook her head. "No, if he warns you, they'll hear. No speaking once you start moving. No sudden turns. Walk like you're going to pay your bill or use the restroom." "What about you?" Sandra whispered to the woman. The woman's jaw tightened. "I'm going to stay. If they see you're gone, I can delay them for a few minutes, maybe long enough." Sandra's eyes widened. "Delay them how?" The woman didn't answer at first. When she did, her voice was soft and resigned. "By being someone they're more interested in hurting than following." Sandra felt cold horror cut through her chest. "No, you can't stay. You should come with us." The woman gave a sad smile. "If I leave with you, they'll follow, but if they think you're still here, they won't check the back until it's too late." "But you'll be in danger," Sandra whispered. "I've been in danger for years," the woman said quietly. "Tonight is nothing new." Keanu leaned forward slightly. "What's your name?" The woman hesitated before answering. "Marla." Keanu nodded slowly. "Marla, thank you." Marla looked at him with an emotion caught between gratitude and grief. "Just get her out. That's all I care about." The shadow behind them stood up. Very slowly. Sandra's breath stopped. Keanu reacted instantly but subtly. He reached down, lifted his phone, and pretended to read a message as he stood up casually. He didn't turn toward the shadow. He didn't look back. He simply stretched, adjusted his coat, and walked calmly toward the counter as if nothing was wrong. The shadow shifted again, leaning slightly as if trying to observe him, but Keanu didn't give any tell. His movements were natural, controlled, believable. He reached the counter. The barista smiled at him. Need anything? Water, Keanu said calmly. His voice was smooth enough that even Sandra almost believed nothing was happening. He took the glass, thanked the barista, and discreetly scanned the cafe layout. The service corridor door was exactly where Marla had described, half hidden behind a tall potted plant next to the coffee grinder. Keanu stepped slightly to the side, blocking the view from the rest of the cafe, and slowly slid the key into the lock. He didn't open it yet. He turned his head just enough to catch Sandra's peripheral vision. It was her turn. Sandra counted to 5 in her head while trying to keep her breathing steady. She pushed her hair behind her ear, pretending to fix it, then stood up with a casual slowness she didn't feel. The shadow behind them didn't move. She walked toward Keanu with calm, steady steps that felt anything but calm inside. Her legs were weak, her hands shaking slightly at her sides. But Keanu saw her coming, and he straightened just enough to shield the door with his body. When she reached him, her eyes flicked toward the hidden door. Keanu murmured just loud enough for her to hear, "You're doing great." Her heart clutched at the reassurance. She stepped beside him, angling herself toward the corridor. Michael was next. He took a slow breath and stood up like he was going to follow them to the counter. He moved carefully, deliberately. But unlike Sandra, Michael's fear was harder to hide. He swallowed too visibly, his shoulders too stiff, and as he walked, one small slip happened. His boots squeaked on the floor. The shadow behind them straightened sharply. Marla reacted instantly, standing so quickly that her chair scraped loudly, drawing attention to herself instead. The shadow turned toward her. Not toward Michael. Not toward Sandra. Marla took one slow step forward, forcing the shadow's focus onto her fully. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her eyes. The shadow didn't answer. Didn't blink. Only stared at her. Sandra felt her pulse break into scattered shards of panic. Keanu saw it and whispered, "Go, now." He gently pushed the door open, just enough for Sandra to slip inside first. The corridor was narrow, dark, and smelled faintly of coffee grounds and cleaning solution. Sandra stepped inside, barely able to see in the dim light, her breath fogging in the cold draft rushing through the narrow hall. Keanu followed, pulling Michael in behind him, then quietly closing the door until it was just a crack, enough for him to watch the cafe floor without being seen. Through that crack, he saw Marla standing face to face with the shadow. The shadow lowered their hood. Keanu's breath caught, because he recognized that face. Too familiar, too dangerous, and far too close. The person leaned in toward Marla, whispering something that made her flinch. Keanu gently closed the door the rest of the way, locking the 3 of them inside the service corridor. Sandra turned to him, her voice trembling. "Who was that? Did you see their face?" Keanu's jaw clenched. "Yes." "Who was it?" Michael whispered urgently. Keanu slowly turned to them, his expression dark, serious, protective in a way Sandra had never seen before. "Someone who shouldn't know where we are," he said softly. "Someone who shouldn't be able to find us this easily. Someone who should have been gone years ago." Sandra's breath hitched. "Keanu, what are you talking about?" He looked directly into her eyes, and the truth in his gaze made her stomach drop. "Sandra," he whispered, "your mother wasn't the only one who kept secrets." Michael stiffened. "What does that mean?" Keanu hesitated, and for the first time that night, fear flicked across his eyes. "I know who that person is," he said. Sandra felt the corridor tilt around her. "How?" Keanu swallowed hard, his voice low. "Because years ago, before your mother died, she came to me." Sandra froze. Michael looked confused. "She what?" Keanu nodded slowly. She warned me. Silence pressed against them like the walls were closing in. Sandra whispered, "Warned you about what?" Keanu exhaled, his voice breaking at the edges. "Warned me that if anything ever happened to her, I had to protect you." Sandra's eyes filled with tears as the world around her seemed to collapse inward. And before she could breathe, before she could demand the truth, before she could understand why her mother had gone to Keanu in secret, the corridor lights suddenly flickered, then went out completely, leaving them in total darkness.